In today's episode of Truth is Now Treason, we will be discussing the greatest threat to all of mankind, how we're all doomed because of it. Welcome to Truth is Now Treason. We are Lennox and Dietrich. Lennox, which actor is your favorite James Bond?
If I remember his name right, it's Roger Moore.
Okay.
He's one of the older James Bond.
Yeah. Mm.
I long for me a mature man.
Well, he's definitely mature. Do you know how old he is?
No.
He's 89.
Ooh.
He's 30 years older than you.
Yeah, so like I said, traders, I long for me some maturity in my household.
Are you saying there's a maturity deficit right now?
There's a big one.
Smudge, I can't believe that Lennox is talking about you that way. As mine is Daniel Craig. And I think it's quite obvious he's the best of all the Bonds. But then if you ask my dad, his favorite is Sean Connery. He would say that he's the best Bond. So really, it probably comes down to what your age is. But what's really great about the Bond films, and in almost all of them, if Bond doesn't succeed, then the whole world could quite possibly explode.
And unfortunately, it's almost like we are living in a James Bond movie. Everything that happens, especially in the news, is passed off as if the fate of the world hangs in the balance. And we see this regarding the Russian-Ukraine war. If one Russian boot remains on Ukrainian soil, America must send as much money to help, or the world will explode. We also see it with other things, like if Trump wins our next election, our democracy will be lost forever. These entire premises are based on lies, and I wish we could explain why they are lies, but we won't, because our topic is about another lie circulating. And we are here to expose it because we know that all lies are never a good thing, especially when God's word tells us we are not to lie.
Yeah, here's the newest lie that's going around. And where it's really becoming a problem is that even people in the church, like Lennox said, are buying into this. And this is the lie of Christian nationalism and the lie of how it's a growing problem.
I know of a couple of pastors who have preached sermons on this very thing. I've seen other followers of Christ who I believe are truly genuine believers post things on Facebook, and I'm scratching my head wondering, why are we even talking about this? But Dietrich and I are going to talk about it because there is a lie that surrounds this.
Yeah, so what is Christian nationalism? Here's a definition taken from an article in Christianity Today called What is Christian Nationalism? Now, Christianity Today is an organization that writes about various news topics, supposedly from a biblical perspective. Unfortunately, they didn't in this one. But in our next episode, we're going to expose their deceived way of thinking.
Personally, if I had to define what Christian nationalism is, I would just tell you it's a made-up term. It's a derogatory term directed at any person that they see as a believer. And it's an attempt to cast a negative light on someone who might be pushing back against our evil culture or our government. And we're going to explain more of this, but for now, we're going to go ahead and just use Christianity Today's definition. So Christian nationalism, according to them, say that it's a belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way.
Now, you might ask, especially if you're a believer, well, what's wrong with that? Stick with us, because when you really break this down, you're going to understand how there's numerous problems with this statement.
We're going to present a study. Okay, now this study was done for the House of Representatives January 6th committee. Now, I don't think there's a person that doesn't know what happened on January 6th. You know, that supposed insurrection with no guns.
The darkest day in the day of our democracy.
Yeah, they were going to take over the government with no weapons. Well, we're not going to debate that. Okay, but this study was done for that committee that was supposed to be investigating all these people that were there. So the title of this is called The Role of Christian Nationalism on January 6th and After, What National Survey Data Tells Us. So it looks like, according to them, that they think Christian nationalists were there on January 6th. And according to this particular study, these are the things that a Christian nationalist believes.
So when doing this study, what they did is they took 7 points, and that we're going to share here in just a second. They used it as a questionnaire to see if people were Christian nationalists. So when those surveyed would answer the questions, these individuals would rate themselves on a scale from 1 to 4 on how strong their beliefs about these points were. And although the person probably didn't know at the time of completing the survey, the higher you rated yourself, the more of a Christian nationalist you are. And so here's their first point. Their point was the federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation.
The second, the federal government should advocate Christian values. Freedom, love, peace, forgiveness. Those are Christian values.
The federal government should get rid of strict separation of church and state in the case of Christianity.
The federal government should allow the display of religious symbols in public spaces.
Their next one was the federal government should allow prayer in public schools.
The success of the United States is part of God's plan.
And their last one, I consider founding documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution to be divinely inspired.
So, according to those who performed this study, a Christian nationalist believe those things, and that the federal government overall, in summary, should make the United States a Christian nation.
So we're going to start off by saying this right here. We at Truth Is Now Treason are not Christian nationalists, with the exception of Lennox. So to believe in Christian nationalism, an idea that we should make our country a Christian nation, is to believe a lie about our history. It's quite clear the founding fathers understood that people in that day were fleeing to the New World so that they could live a life where the government was not telling them how to worship God.
Yeah, they wanted this nation to reflect this, because many nations at that time were telling their citizens how they were to worship God. And this is why we have separation of church and state here in America. And that is the purpose of this separation, to prevent this kind of nonsense.
Yeah, the state has no business telling anyone how to think, especially in regards to religion. We agree with the founding fathers 100% on this.
Even if we did make this a Christian nation, you're going to still find numerous problems with it.
Yeah, does the nation shut down on Sundays? How does that work for hospitals or the police or groups like that? So what kind of a Christian nation are we going to be? Baptist? Catholic? Apostolic? Episcopalian?
And if we are a Christian nation, is church attendance mandatory on Sunday morning, Sunday nights, and Wednesday nights? Oh, this is a good one. Will tithing be mandatory? This is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think all of us are seeing a problem. All of these things is in violation of the Constitution. So no, it's not going to work. Next.
Yeah, the second point was the federal government should advocate Christian values. Again, the problem with this is, whose idea of Christian values are you going to use? And I can say I agree with this to a degree, but again, I can see huge issues arising based on your rule of law on this.
Is prohibition a Christian value? Some probably would say so. And if so, how do we enforce something that made our nation worse and not better? Biden has said that he's a devout Catholic, yet he's for abortion. So this is hypocrisy, and there are problems here.
Another belief of a Christian nationalist, now this one we simplified to help people understand this, was taken from the article. It says, the federal government should get rid of strict separation of church and state unless it is Christianity. So you want to take a nation of freedom and have the government enforce religion on people who do not believe in Christianity?
This is the antithesis of freedom. If you talk to most Protestants, they believe that the Bible teaches free will when it comes to worship, because God is not looking for worshipers who have been forced into worship by the state. He's looking for worshipers who freely serve and love him, not ones who have been mandated. Another point that Christian nationalists believe, according to this study anyway, the federal government should allow the display of religious symbols in public places. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but in the past few years, we have seen numerous instances of local governments and their employees setting up Satanist religious symbols.
Yet, do we really want a government allowing religious displays to be set up when we see what they're capable of? The answer is obvious. We do not want the government endorsing any religion through displays. I mean, also to believe that it would just end with Christian displays shows a lack of knowledge of history or how mankind acts.
Who knows what we would end up seeing displayed anyway?
Yeah. My guess is it would be the LGBTQ Christ, and instead of the wise men, you'd have the four guys from Village People as the wise men. We could see this getting pretty crazy.
So the next point that a Christian nationalist is supposed to believe is about prayer in schools. What do you think, traders? Do you think prayer in schools should be allowed? Well, they say that Christian nationalists think the federal government should allow prayer in public schools. No, there is no government, person, or entity who can prevent prayer at any time in any place. Believe me, the government under this leadership would love to be able to, but they can't. Government can't read your mind and they can't control what you think. So good luck with restricting private prayer.
Now, if it said the federal government should teach prayer in public schools, we've got a huge problem with that. What kind of prayer are you going to teach? And praying to whom? Again, I don't want a leftist teacher teaching kids to pray to Gaia, and Gaia is the Greek goddess of the earth, to help free the planet from the effects of climate catastrophe.
Oh, mighty Gaia, please help me. I have a mighty climate crisis right here in my household every time Dietrich goes to the bathroom. And if you are thinking, but it would only be Christian prayer, do you really think a government, especially one that we have right now, would be able to or even willing to regulate that? The obvious answer is no. But does someone who believes in public prayer, like let's say before a team practice, does that make them a Christian nationalist?
Yes.
According to this study, it does, especially if you rated yourself a 4 out of 4, right? Who's even deciding this? I mean, this seems a little bizarre to me because what if I just wanted to survey some people to find out how sexually active they were and they rated themselves a 4 out of 4 of being sexually active? Could I just slap a label on them and say, pervert nationalist?
We definitely don't have any pervert nationalists in this household. Yeah, Christian nationalists are then supposedly believe that the success of the United States is part of God's plan. Now, I cannot read the mind of God in regards to his hand in history, and I really have no intention of trying. The reality is that the success of a nation is mostly based on the answer to this question. Is the nation operating as a reflection of God and his will? If it is, then yes, it will be a success. If it's not, then it will not. We can see this throughout history.
Well, I do believe that is one reason why America has succeeded, though, compared to all other nations. Our government system was founded around the concept of freedom, which happens to be a Christian value. Uh-oh. Does that make me a Christian nationalist?
Hold on. I got to make a call to my orcas. Yeah, this last one that Christian nationalists believe is that the United States historical documents like the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution are divinely inspired. Now, I love the Declaration of Independence and I love the Constitution.
They were written by brilliant men, some of whom loved God very much, but divinely inspired is not defined in this article by Christianity Today. So we have to surmise what that means. If divinely inspired means God told them to write it, then we can say yes, possibly to this because we believe God can and does guide history.
Yeah, but if by this you mean that the documents are on the level of the Bible, then the response must be absolutely not. There is no other book, secular or spiritual, on the same level as Scripture. Also, the Constitution is a political document where concessions were being made to keep all the states unified. God doesn't make concessions. He's only interested in truth. You know, the point to these 7 facets of supposed Christian nationalism just plain and simple do not work in a nation that's based upon freedom, especially religious freedom. Christian nationalism, it's based on a lie, and lies just simply don't work in the kingdom of God.
And if this is what Christian nationalists believe, or if this is what they're just accusing people of believing, then it is amazing to us that any group of people who love God, truly love God, and love this nation would believe that a God that allows people to freely choose or reject him while living in a nation based on freedom would think that either entity, God or nation, would want to enforce a religion on people. It quite simply doesn't add up.
Yeah, here's the probable reasons why we see Christian nationalism happening.
Or it may not even be happening. Could just be people who hate Christians are trying to paint any believer as a Christian nationalist and are just falsely accusing these individuals of this, and they have no idea what it even means. Find me a Christian nationalist, somebody.
I just found one. I'm looking right at her.
I'm serious.
Right here, Christian nationalist radar. Beep.
But, okay.
Beep.
All right. So let's just say Christian nationalism is happening for purposes of argument, like this study indicates.
You know, what we're seeing here is they're creating a language, okay? They're wanting to paint people as something they are not. So they want to take Christians and they want to change it from Christians to Christian nationalists. Why? Because they want to paint us as something we're not. Tell me, when it comes to Christians today, what Christian is saying to people, you must worship God? I'm not hearing it. What Christian is saying, you must come to church on Sunday? I'm not hearing it. However, what is the group that's saying, you must get rid of your gasoline-powered vehicle and get an electric vehicle? The answer is quite clear. What group is saying, you cannot speak this way, you must use the pronouns a person tells you they want you to use? The answer is quite clear. What group is the one that says, you can't drink a 48-ounce Slurpee, it's bad for you, you must drink only a 12-ounce Slurpee? It's quite clear who this is.
Yeah, it's the group that's calling out Christian nationalists and saying they're a threat.
Exactly. And who's the real threat? It's not Christians. It's the other ones. And they're doing this to paint us as something we're not. You know, as we have covered before, we're living in a day of biblical illiteracy. People don't understand who God is. And when you don't know who he is and you're claiming to represent him, you're going to misrepresent him. Secondly, we're living in a day where the government is passing laws that are contrary to Christian values and are destructive to the family.
Which is causing a reaction, and it's causing a lot of anger and frustration, especially from parents. Parents, because they see this government taking away their parental rights. And we sympathize with this group. Of course, we do. But don't forget, though, there is a Christ-like way to react that builds the kingdom of heaven and honors God. And then there's an un-Christ-like way to react to this that does the opposite.
Yeah, the minimal violence done on January 6th was un-Christ-like and did nothing good for our nation or for Christianity. However, we were never told by Christ to idly sit by when our leaders are evil and allow them to do whatever they want. We are mandated to stand against evil, but our reactions must reflect the actions of Christ.
And when our reactions do reflect Christ, they will be effective. Christian nationalism has not been effective because it does not reflect Christ. Or maybe it hasn't been effective because I haven't heard one person say, hey, I'm a Christian nationalist. Traders, can you find me one? Please do. Find me one. Put on your Christian nationalist detectors because Dietrich's is not working.
Yeah, I do want to see effective change happen in this nation. And it doesn't start with mandating Christ from politicians above.
It starts with all of us on the ground being salt and light. And if you haven't listened to our recent episode just a couple of weeks ago called Salt and Light, I want you to, because that's really what Truth is Now Treason is all about.
Absolutely. When we are salt and light to the people around us, that's when we see us being effective for the cost of Christ.
Until next time, my fellow traders.